25R1 by Ms. Jacobs. For what purpose does the gentlewoman seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will please distribute the amendment. Without objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman for the purpose of explaining her amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment would establish a human rights office modeled after the one at SOCOM at every combatant command. It would use only existing resources. Respecting human rights in all of our military operations is crucial to their legitimacy, effectiveness, and long-term objectives. That's why Southcom was the first combatant command to create a human rights office 30 years ago. And since then, Southcom has found this office to be hugely helpful in accomplishing its mission. Last year, Southcom Commander General Laura Richardson called this office a huge enabler for Southcom that has helped them build deeper relations with partner countries over the years. That's why we should have these offices in all of our combatant commands. Human rights offices would help ensure that U.S. forces and partner militaries do not engage in or enable human rights violations that can damage our credibility and undermine the trust that we've built. They would also help enforce and implement important bipartisan laws and policies, like the combating trafficking in persons policy at the department. And they help embody what American values should be abroad. A human rights office in every combatant command wouldn't just be symbolic. It would be an important step to protect and defend human rights while reinforcing global norms and U.S. soft power. These are the types of policy decisions that can have powerful, long-lasting results, helping us strengthen partnerships around the world, earn trust with local populations, and uphold our values. And let's be clear, this is not just about doing the morally right thing, although that's important. Reducing civilian harm and protecting human rights helps protect our troops and reduces the threat of violent extremism, making all of us safer. So I urge my colleagues to support my amendment that would model Southcom's existing human rights office in every combatant command and require a dedicated team to focus on human rights, engage with relevant stakeholders, implement relevant laws, and promote human rights with our partners. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair recognizes himself. I agree that human rights are important. The missions of the combatant commands already include the protection of civilians and human rights. The gentlelady has not established that our military has failed in these missions. Furthermore, she is creating an unfunded mandate by not providing any additional resources to stand up and staff these offices. Therefore, I cannot support the amendment. Is there further debate on the amendment? Gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Crow, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm speaking in support of Representative Jacobs' amendment. I think this is a tremendous piece of legislation that actually would bring a lot of value to our military, to our ability to conduct missions, and to make sure that our servicemen and women have the resources, the expertise, and the capabilities that they need to perform their core functions of protecting our nation and conducting their missions effectively. My support for this amendment is born out of my own personal combat experience as a paratrooper and an Army Ranger, having served 3 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. I know that lethality goes hand in hand with making sure that we pay attention to civilian considerations, whether we're doing stability and support operations, counterinsurgency operations, or conventional military operations, making sure that we are mindful of international law, that we are working closely with civilian populations, and that we are earning the support of those populations, and we are working effectively with our enabling partners and forces. There is pretty much no place in the world where our men and women are deployed where we aren't working hand in hand with local military forces. This office, as is proven by the history of the similar office in Southcom, is very effective in doing all of those things. And the value of this amendment is that this isn't hypothetical. This isn't something that we have to guess about. It is proven. Southcom initiated this program. It has been effective. It's been praised by our partners. It's been praised by our military commanders. It's been praised by our service members who are downrange in multiple places in Southcom who have used this effectively. This, again, is not a hypothetical thing, nor is it a distraction from our mission. Again, my experience shows that when we're working downrange, deployed in contingency operations, our ability to work effectively, to be mindful of the impact of our operations with local forces is essential to it. So I am very proud, again, to support Representative Jacobs' work on this. She has done her due diligence. She's done her research. This is something that, through my own personal experience, I think would add great value to our military, and I would urge my colleagues to support it. I yield back.
Gentleman from Colorado yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. McGuire.
Mr. Chairman, I oppose this amendment from the gentlewoman from California. This amendment redirects existing resources and personnel to focus solely on a narrow scope of issues that are already covered by existing resources, policies, and law. To quote the amendment at subsection C, the Secretary may carry out the requirements of this section using existing bulletin and resources. If this amendment becomes law, it will divert existing resources and personnel from the missions they are already obligated to and assigned to. I'm not convinced that there is a need for these offices, as the Department of Defense is heavily involved in protecting both human and preventing civilian harm. There are many well-established protections for these concerns already in place. For example, the Leahy Law, enacted in 1961, prohibits the U.S. from assisting foreign security forces if they've committed gross violations of human rights. Additionally, DoD requires that all personnel receive human rights and civilian harm awareness, education, and training. The gentlelady has an amendment included in an en bloc to codify the presence of judge advocates at all combatant commands in numbers sufficient to provide legal advice to all commanders responsible for planning and organizing military operations. That amendment will ensure these protections and the oversight of them will continue. This amendment would only duplicate those existing obligations. Furthermore, our military is appropriately focused on working with their military counterparts and should remain as such. For example, a retired colonel tells of his experience when he was deployed for over 2 years to Colombia and Ecuador on training and advising missions. He states that on one deployment, they were held up for 6 months while they waited for the veteran of the Colombian Counter-Narcotics Brigade they were there to train. The brigade had officers who had been implicated in human rights violations. Ultimately, those officers were removed from the units the U.S. military was there to train. In his words from 2016, once the military is deployed, it must provide human rights training to counterparts in the host nation. We had to allocate time on our training schedule to go through a block of instructions on human rights with Colombian soldiers and law enforcement officers. All kinds of interesting debates arose during those sessions. And I got to tell you, most of my time serving as a Navy SEAL, I served in Southcom and dealt with the same issues myself. Missions like Colonel's happen every day all over the world. Our combatant commands collaborate regularly with embassies and departments of state chiefs of mission on where to focus their efforts. The Department of State and its chiefs of mission have a presence throughout the area of responsibility of each combatant command and are better equipped and positioned in many ways to promote human rights and coordinate U.S. government activities to that end. I am also concerned that this amendment requires that the Human Rights Office's liaison with human rights organization. There is no clarity on what type of organization these may be. As we saw with the Biden administration, a lot of these organizations they chose to work with were using U.S. funds to push for policies opposed by the local culture, to include expansive abortion access and radical transgender pro-LGBTQ initiatives. These are not organizations that the military should be working with. The military is appropriately focused on protecting and defending human rights through their missions of providing security and training their local counterparts. Our military abides by the highest standards for the human rights protection in the world and trains their counterparts on the same standards. This amendment suggests that isn't the case. I will oppose this amendment as it imposes an unfunded mandate on our combatant commands to address a problem that does not exist. So I urge my colleagues to vote no. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentlelady from Washington, Ms. Strickland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am going to express my strong support for this amendment by my colleague, Congresswoman Jacobs. The gentleman who just spoke made a very strong case for why we need this in other combatant commands. But I want to point something out. We are pulling major staff away from the State Department. We are defunding USAID. When we talk about the need for soft power, this can help fill the gap and make sure that we're doing what we must do. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Is there any further debate on the question?
Mr. Chair,
Gentleman, Mr. Vindman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to speak in favor of this amendment, and my support is grounded in my 25 years of military service as a paratrooper, infantry officer, and also as a judge advocate. At a time when we're stepping away from our foundational values, when we're cutting staff at the Department of State and closing the Office of Global Criminal Justice, this capability needs to reside somewhere, and the Department of Defense is the perfect place. Judge advocates, also senior judge advocates, have been relieved of their duties, and so to me it seems obvious that we're drifting away from our values, and this is a way to restore those values, reduce civilian harm, and ensure that we're complying with our obligations under international law, including international criminal law and the Geneva Convention. So in order to make sure that we abide by our values, I support this amendment. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. Is there any other? Mr. Whitesides is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to yield my time to Congressman Jacobs.
Thank you. First of all, we're talking about a $1 trillion authorization almost between this and the budget reconciliation bill. So the idea of an unfunded mandate is completely ridiculous, not to mention the fact that it was actually majority staff who were the ones to advise in the language that said it had to use existing resources. Also, to my colleague on the other side of the aisle's point about this being duplicative or something, it seems like he doesn't actually trust the COCOM COs to know who to work with. But DoD is who decides which organizations to engage with, and this is about executing DoD's existing policies, not duplicating or doing new things. So to me, all of the arguments against this are completely bogus. It's clearly in our interest, as we heard from the Southcon CO, who said this was important to enable her COCOM to do what they need to do. And with that, I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Whitesides.
Gentleman from California yield back the balance of his time. Is anybody else seeking recognition on Ms. Jacobs' amendment? If there's no further debate, the question occurs on the amendment offered by Ms. Jacobs. So many in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Opinion of the chair is the amendment's not agreed to. A recorded vote is requested. The recorded vote shall be postponed until a later time.